Hello there. Today we will be looking at three forms of prayer. In part 1 we defined prayer, and if you haven't watched part 1 yet, I suggest you go back and watch it so we all get the definition of prayer down. Three forms of prayer: vocal prayer, mental prayer, and contemplative prayer. Now from their names we can immediately tell that there is a difference between these three forms of prayer, but I want to emphasize that they ultimately serve the same purpose, which is building a relationship with God through a constant awareness and acknowledgement of His presence. So whether we pray as individuals or as a community, we all strive to attain the same goal, which is the love of God. St. Teresa of Avila in her spiritual writings suggests that prayer leads to contemplation, which is the love of God. First, vocal prayer. Most people find it easy to engage in this form of prayer. Now, although it is the first form of prayer, it doesn't suggest by any means that it is the least. As a matter of fact, vocal prayer is a fundamental prayer, is a fundamental form of prayer on which mental and contemplative prayers are built on. All those who practice mental prayer or contemplative prayer always began with vocal prayer. The Catholic Church teaches in the Catechism that vocal prayer is an essential part of the Christian life. Besides, Christ Himself, when He taught us how to pray, He gave us the Our Father, which is a vocal prayer. Mental prayer. Since vocal prayer is the foundation, mental prayer arises from a deeper search for God. This form of prayer can be practiced either as individuals or as a community. Usually the individual or the community express a complete willingness to be alone with God. In this personal or communal solitude, the person is able to engage mind, body, and soul. The person's imaginations, emotions, desires, and thoughts are completely engaged in this form of prayer. This disposition of prayer in such a manner express a complete conviction of the person's willingness to convert and also a firm faith in God. Although mental prayer seems to be a little more profound vis-a-vis vocal prayer, it must be noted, as earlier said, that these two forms of prayer serve the same purpose, which is building a stronger relationship with God, a relationship that fosters the love of God and the love of neighbor. Meanwhile, some might find it easy to engage in mental prayer, others still might find it easier to practice vocal prayer. Yet, there might be another group who will find it even easier to practice contemplative prayer. And this takes us to our final form of prayer, contemplative prayer. In contemplative prayer, there is a desire of nothing else but God alone. This is a form of prayer that includes a complete abandonment of self and will. It is a form of prayer that only requires the presence of the person. It is characterized by a sense of silence that is not distracted by thoughts or imaginations. But at the same time, the individual is aware of the presence of the heart. It is a form of prayer that makes us realize, as St. Teresa of Avila would say, that God alone suffices. It is only God who subsists even when everything else changes. It would seem that contemplative prayer surpasses the first two forms of prayer, that is, vocal and mental. Nevertheless, we must continue to remember that vocal prayer is the foundation of all forms of prayer. Every devout soul started with vocal prayer. Besides, contemplation only happens through God's doing. Without God, our prayers don't matter, whether vocal, mental, or contemplative. We only pray because God gives us the grace that is able to lead us to His love, to contemplate His love. So, my dear friends, whether you pray vocally or mentally or contemplatively, all these forms of prayer are important and they are essential in building our lives as Christians. But I would suggest that we try to use all three forms of prayer because they lead us to a different experience of the divine.